You wake up and check your phone not because you want to, but because some part of you believes the day has already started without you. Messages, alerts, metrics, numbers whispering that your value is waiting to be proven again. You brush your teeth while checking emails, sip coffee while scanning calendars, and feel that even your breath is scheduled. Even your silence needs a reason. You smile during meetings, not because you feel joy, but because it keeps the performance smooth. Rest becomes guilt. Presence becomes optimization. And somewhere in the middle of your to-do lists and sleep trackers, you realize you don't live anymore. You just function. And no one asked you if this is what you wanted, because wanting has been replaced by output, and questions like why or for what sound dangerous in a world where time is currency and currency is survival. You try to be grateful, but the gratitude feels forced, automated, part of the same routine that trained you to see milestones where meaning used to be. And now your day is judged not by how you feel, but by how much you did, how fast, how well it compares to someone else. You congratulate others on achievements that make you feel behind. You share wins online not to celebrate, but to stay visible, stay relevant, stay ranked. And when you pause, when you dare to breathe without measuring it, a strange panic sets in, not because you're lost, but because you've forgotten how to not be tracked. Soren Kierkegaard once said, "The crowd is untruth, but now the crowd is productive, responsive, celebrated. And so you conform, not because you believe, but because standing still feels like falling behind." And maybe you haven't lost yourself entirely, but something essential has slipped away without a sound, replaced not with violence, but with efficiency, with polished purpose, with quiet compliance. And here's the truth no one ever told you. You didn't lose your meaning. It was quietly replaced by a metric. You told yourself it was passion, that you were chasing something meaningful, that your goals were yours. But slowly the texture changed. You started filtering dreams through what was achievable, what was efficient, what could be explained on a resume. The wild ideas became side projects, the curiosity turned into skill acquisition, and suddenly your dreams had bullet points. You speak about your ambitions now the way corporations talk about quarterly targets, measurable, time-bound, performance-driven. You say you want to write, but you track clicks. You say you want to build something meaningful, but you measure success in reach, in funding, in metrics. Somewhere along the way, the goal stopped being to feel alive. It became to appear successful. You stopped asking, what moves me, and started asking what works. But what works for who, and at what cost? There's a creeping dissonance inside you, the sense that your actions are technically correct, but spiritually empty. That you are doing all the right things, but becoming someone you don't recognize. You hit targets, but feel nothing. You climb ladders that lead nowhere. You stay busy to avoid the question, if this isn't what I want, why can't I stop? Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." But what happens when your why has been outsourced? When the dream you're chasing isn't yours, but a sanitized version optimized for social approval? You think you're pursuing a vision, but maybe you're just performing a script. And here's the quiet tragedy no one warns you about. You didn't give up on your dream. It was rebranded into a goal you could be judged for. You think you chose this. The goals, the milestones, the numbers on your planner. You think they reflect your ambition, your independence. But look closer. When did your dreams start coming with dashboards? When did your desires start sounding like job descriptions? You were taught to believe in progress, in growth, in upward curves. But what if that belief wasn't born in you, but planted? From an early age, praise was given for performance, not for presence. You were rewarded not for asking why, but for how fast you completed the task. So you learned to link worth with output, love with achievement, identity with results. And now you hunger for KPIs like they're your own cravings, when maybe they're just the only language you were taught to speak. You scroll past others hitting goals and feel inadequate. You hit your own and still feel hollow. There's a quiet war inside you, the part that wants to slow down and the part that panics at the thought of not being enough. The fear isn't failure, the fear is becoming invisible. And so you chase numbers not because they matter, but because without them, you don't know who you are. Jean Baudrillard once said, we live in a world where there is more and more information and less meaning. You were trained to want these metrics, conditioned to feel joy when they rise and shame when they fall. But has anyone asked whether they reflect anything real, anything human? You're told you're in control, that this is your career, your plan, your life. But what if this was never autonomy? What if all you ever did was get better at obeying? And here's the truth that cuts deeper the more you think about it. You didn't choose the KPI. You were trained to need it like it was love. You used to ask, what do I love? Now you ask, will this help me get ahead? You used to follow sparks of joy, weird fascinations, strange ideas that didn't have a label yet. But now, even your curiosity has to justify itself. You read to improve. You write to grow your brand. You learn because someone might value the skill, not because it speaks to something deep in you. Slowly, the question shifted from desire to utility, from wonder to return on investment. And it doesn't feel wrong, exactly. It feels adult, practical. But beneath that practicality, something is going numb. That childlike part of you that used to create for no reason, to explore without a goal, is still there, quietly waiting to be remembered. You tell yourself it's too late, that you're behind, that you can't afford to be unproductive. But maybe that's the lie. Maybe the thing you think makes you strong is what's making you disappear. There's a voice in you, softer now, but still alive. The one that doesn't speak in checklists or deadlines. The one that asks nothing of you except to be real. And that voice deserves space. Because life was never meant to be a constant negotiation of value. You were not built to be useful. You were built to be whole. Simone de Beauvoir once wrote, "Change your life today. Don't gamble on the future, act now without delay." You don't need permission to reclaim your inner life. You don't need a certificate to follow joy. You don't have to wait until you're burnt out to remember what makes you feel human. Your curiosity is not a weakness. Your softness is not inefficiency. And here's the truth you've been too hard on yourself to admit. You didn't lose your passion, you just forgot how to let something matter without needing it to make sense. You used to believe that just being here, breathing, feeling, connecting was enough. That life in its rawness had value before anything was measured. But slowly, quietly, the system changed the terms. You're no longer asked, who are you, but what do you do? Not what do you feel, but what did you finish? The essence of who you are has been traded for the efficiency of what you produce. It didn't happen in one moment. It happened in small rewrites. When meaning was replaced by metrics. When being was overshadowed by doing. When your soul became your resume. Now your worth is calculated in deliverables, in outcomes, in how fast you bounce back, how well you adapt, how neatly you package your existence into goals and growth curves. You're told this is maturity, this is ambition, but deep down, something resists, something aches, because you weren't born to be a unit of performance, you were born to be alive. And if you've felt exhausted, disconnected, confused by a world that only seems to value what you can prove, know this. You're not broken, you're just waking up. You're noticing what others are still too busy to question. As Albert Camus once said, the only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion. You're allowed to exist beyond function. You're allowed to feel more than motivation. You are more than your output. And here's the truth you've sensed all along, but never had the words for. You didn't stop being meaningful. You were just never meant to reduce that meaning into a spreadsheet. You started early. Not with force, but with praise. You raised your hand to ask why, but the gold star came when you got the right answer. In school, you were told to dream, but only within the confines of test scores and career pathways. You learned quickly, curiosity is good, but achievement is safer. Then came the workplace, where your creativity was welcomed if it improved the numbers, where passion was celebrated if it increased engagement, where your value was tied not to who you are, but to what you deliver. And beyond the office, even in your friendships and online spaces, the same logic took hold. You perform confidence, you display progress, you network, optimize, brand yourself until even your identity becomes a campaign. And all along, the most important question, the why that makes us human, gets quieter, more distant, until it almost disappears. But it's still there, flickering beneath the routine, asking whether this is all there is. You're not alone in feeling this. So many people are silently carrying the weight of performing a life that no longer feels like theirs. But the fact that you're noticing, that you're still asking, is your strength, not your failure. You haven't fallen behind, you've stayed awake. As Viktor Frankl once said, when a person can't find a deep sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure. But you're not here to be distracted, you're here to remember, and you will. Because you still have that voice inside you, the one that resists the checklist, the one that believes life is more than measurable progress. Believe it, trust it, it's still yours. And here's the truth they don't want you to realize. They didn't take your why, they trained you to stop asking. You dream of walking away, turning off the noise, quitting the performance. There are moments, late at night, in the shower, between tasks, where you feel it. That aching desire to breathe on your own terms, to wake up without a plan, to create without purpose, to exist without being watched. But then it hits you, the fear, not of failing, but of vanishing, of becoming someone who no longer fits, no longer earns, no longer matters. You start to wonder, if I stop playing the game, do I still exist in the eyes of this world? Can I be free and still be seen? Can I slow down and still be worthy? There's a fracture inside you, the part that longs for spaciousness and the part that clings to the schedule like a safety net. You fantasize about escape, then panic at the first step outside the system. Because freedom sounds beautiful until you realize how much of your identity was built inside the cage. And that's not your fault. You've been wired to conflate control with safety, productivity with purpose, visibility with value. But listen, there's a version of you that doesn't need to be impressive to be important, that doesn't need to be perfect to be powerful. You won't lose yourself if you let go. You'll finally meet yourself. Søren Kierkegaard once wrote, "Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom." And maybe that's what you're feeling. Not weakness, but awakening. You're not behind. You're just standing at the edge of a life that's finally yours to shape. Trust that pull. Honor that resistance. It's not sabotage, it's your soul knocking. And here's the truth that changes everything. You're not afraid of freedom. You're afraid of being free in a world that only respects the cage. You keep going, hitting deadlines, checking boxes, smiling when you're tired, saying "I'm fine" when you're breaking. The system rewards it, the quiet compliance, the reliable function, the ability to keep producing even when your heart is nowhere in the room. And slowly, something begins to shift. Not suddenly, but deeply. Joy feels distant. Your laughter sounds rehearsed. Rest becomes guilt. You no longer ask how you feel, you ask how much you've done. And even when you succeed, there's no lasting satisfaction, only the next task. You feel like a machine wearing a human face, expected to optimize emotions, regulate productivity, suppress anything messy or real. You wake up anxious. Not because anything's wrong, but because you don't remember the last time something felt truly right. The world claps for your achievements, but no one notices your fading light. And that's the most dangerous part. It all looks so normal, so admirable, but inside you're shrinking, feeling less like a person, more like a product. And if you felt this, you're not weak, you're not broken. You're responding intelligently to a culture that measures everything except meaning. Franz Kafka once wrote, "You are free, and that is why you are lost." But maybe being lost is the first step back to something real. Because you're not supposed to feel this numb. You're not meant to live inside spreadsheets and status updates. You are allowed to feel joy without earning it, to rest without explanation, to exist without being useful. Your softness matters. Your slowness matters. And here's the truth you've been taught to hide. You're not unmotivated, you're just tired of being treated like a tool. You look around and everyone seems to be moving fast, chasing something, updating, optimizing, upgrading, And even when no one says it, the message is clear. Don't stop, don't slow down, don't fall behind. You hear friends talking about their goals, their metrics, their next steps, and it starts to feel like a race you never agreed to run. But you still lace up, still show up, still perform, because if everyone else is doing it, how can you not? You don't want to be the weak link, the lazy one, the one who doesn't get it. So you smile, nod, compete in silence, and no one questions the rules. Not because they make sense, but because questioning looks like failure. It's a quiet agreement, an unspoken pact. We'll all pretend this is working if no one brings up the cost. But inside, so many are tired. So many are pretending. So many are craving space but afraid to ask for it. You are not the only one feeling this pressure, and you are not the only one wondering if this is all there is. And that question, that tiny sacred why, still matters. Hold on to it, because the system only survives if we all keep pretending it's inevitable. But it's not. You're allowed to live by different rhythms. You're allowed to define success on your own terms. As Erich Fromm once wrote, the most important step in escaping the trap is to recognize that you are in one. You're not behind, you're awake. And even if your voice trembles, even if your pace is slower, you are not alone. And here's the truth we all sense but rarely say out loud. You're not the problem. You're just refusing to normalize the madness. You thought you were making your own choices, your career, your goals, your version of success. You told yourself it was personal, intentional, free. But look closely. When did you start wanting what you want? Can you trace the origin of your ambition, or has it always just been there? Handed down, reinforced, applauded. From school to social media to workplace evaluations, the path was never empty. It was preloaded. You were taught to pick a lane, but not to ask who built the road. And so you chase titles, milestones, and validations that feel like they're yours, even when something in your body whispers they're not. You celebrate wins that don't move you. You pursue goals that exhaust you, and somewhere deep down, the silence starts to crack. Is this really mine? That discomfort, that quiet voice asking questions is not rebellion, it's recognition. You've been trying to make someone else's blueprint feel like home, and that's not weakness, that's awakening. You are not alone in this confusion. So many people are quietly wondering the same thing, but are too afraid to sound ungrateful. But freedom begins the moment you realize the system trained you not just to obey, but to desire the obedience. Jean-Paul Sartre once said, "Man is condemned to be free because once thrown into the world, he is responsible for everything he does." But responsibility doesn't mean accepting someone else's script. It means writing your own. So be kind to yourself. You didn't fail the plan was never yours to begin with. And here's the truth that most systems hope you never discover. You didn't choose that goal. You were programmed to think you did. There comes a point where even achievement feels like failure. You hit the target, but it lands with silence. You check the box, but nothing inside moves. You've done everything right, optimized your schedule, maximized your output, aligned every minute with some measurable goal. But instead of satisfaction, there's only fatigue, a bone-deep kind of tired, not from effort, but from emptiness. You've spoken KPIs so long, you've forgotten the language of meaning. What once lit you up now just gets added to the calendar. Even your joy feels transactional. You find yourself staring at screens, attending meetings, posting wins, and wondering, what is all this for? But you can't stop. Because slowing down feels like disappearing. You tell yourself to be grateful. Others would kill for this. But the more you suppress the question, the louder it echoes. Is this a life, or just a well-managed decline? You try to reconnect, read something, take a walk, call a friend, but even rest feels like another task. You're not just exhausted, you're alienated. You miss yourself, but you're not sure where to find you. And if you've reached this place, know this: you are not weak, you are not broken, you are not alone. You are confronting the cost of a system that promised meaning through metrics and delivered a numb kind of survival. As Byung-Chul Han wrote, fatigue arises when life is reduced to bare activity. But you were not made for bare activity. You were made to feel, to wonder, to belong. So don't shame the fatigue. Listen to it. Let it tell you what you're no longer willing to sacrifice, because here's the truth you already feel but haven't yet said out loud. You're not tired from doing too much. You're tired from doing too little that matters. You've been told that meaning comes after performance, that if you work hard enough, climb high enough, prove yourself long enough, it will all start to make sense. But it hasn't. Because meaning was never at the end of a checklist. It lives in the beginning. It's not what you produce, it's why you care in the first place. It's in the questions that stir you, the people who anchor you, the quiet moments that don't ask you to achieve anything at all. You've been measuring success in output, but real meaning is felt in connection, in the honesty of a conversation, in the stillness of presence, in doing something simply because your soul says yes. You're not empty because you haven't done enough. You're empty because you've been asked to live without roots. And when everything is optimized, nothing feels sacred. But the truth is, you were never meant to function like a machine. You were meant to respond like a human, to be moved, to care deeply, and to live not for metrics, but for meaning itself. You don't need permission to return to what's real, to redefine value in terms only your heart understands. As Martin Buber wrote, all real living is meeting. What gives your life meaning is not how many goals you hit, but how many moments you truly inhabit. The laughter you didn't schedule, the help you gave without gain, the art you made when no one was watching. So if something in you is waking up, let it. You don't have to burn it all down. Just start listening again to what feels real, to what makes you feel alive. Because here's the truth they never wanted you to realize. You were never missing meaning. You were just taught to stop looking where it lives. You start to slow down, not because you're weak, but because you finally understand that speed isn't the same as direction. You take a breath before answering. You leave a message unread. You say no to things that used to define your worth, and for a moment, it feels like freedom. But almost immediately, the world pushes back. People start asking if everything's okay, if you've lost your edge, if you're still driven. The silence you created gets filled with doubt. The space you carved is treated like absence. You begin to see it clearly. This system doesn't just reward productivity, it punishes rest. It's not enough to be good, you have to be fast, available, branded. Even your healing needs to be framed as a comeback. Even your peace must be monetized into a story. And deep down, you feel the pull again, the temptation to speed back up just to be seen. But don't, because what you're doing now, this return to slowness, to presence, to being, is not failure. It's resistance. You are choosing to live by a rhythm that honors your humanity, even when it costs you visibility. That takes courage, and you're not alone. More people are stepping out of the current than you think. As Lao Tzu wrote, nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. So trust the wisdom of your own pace. Trust that your worth was never in your speed, but in your sincerity. Let the world misinterpret your pause. Let them question your stillness. The ones who matter will understand. And here's the truth you've been waiting to name. You're not falling behind. You're just refusing to be dragged. You stop searching, not because you've given up, but because you finally understand that meaning isn't something waiting at the end of a path. It's something you choose to build along the way. You stop asking what you're meant to do and start asking what feels real when no one is watching. You begin again, quietly. Maybe you pick up an old passion, speak a truer sentence, make something that doesn't need to be shared. You let go of waiting for the perfect sign, the external permission, the algorithmic affirmation. Instead, you start to write your own rules, not loud or revolutionary, but honest. You realize that meaning doesn't come from being validated by the system you were trying to escape. It comes from taking responsibility for your own definition of a life well lived. And yes, it's uncertain, it's messy, it's not optimized, but it's yours. And for the first time, that feels enough. Of course, the fear doesn't vanish, the doubt still shows up, but now it has company. Your clarity, your calm, your choice, and choice is power. Jean-Paul Sartre wrote, Man is nothing else but what he makes of himself. You're not here to discover some pre-written purpose. You're here to author your existence with intention, to shape meaning not by finding it, but by living it. You don't need your life to be impressive. You need it to be true. And you are allowed to start small, to change your mind, to grow in ways no one sees. Because here's the truth that sets you free. You were never lost. You were just waiting for the courage to define yourself without their script. There's something you used to do as a child, not for praise, not for progress, not for any reward, but just because it made you feel alive. Maybe it was drawing shapes with no meaning. Maybe it was singing to yourself in a room no one else heard. Maybe it was simply staring at the sky and asking questions no adult had time to answer. Whatever it was, it didn't need to be efficient. It didn't need to be productive. It only needed to be yours. And somewhere along the way, that part of you got buried beneath metrics, milestones, performance, but it's still there, waiting, not to be measured, just to be remembered. And maybe that's the real beginning, not a dramatic reinvention, but a soft return. So pause with me, let yourself feel how much you miss doing something purely for the joy of it. Ask yourself, when was the last time you did something that didn't serve a purpose but simply made you feel like you again? And if something just came to mind, a moment, a memory, a feeling, I want you to share it right now in the comments. Because this isn't just a video, it's a mirror. And maybe your story is the one someone else needs to hear to come home to themselves. As Alan Watts once said, you are under no obligation to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago. You can begin again. You can slow down without disappearing. You can be enough without being impressive. You can write a life that isn't driven by metrics, but guided by meaning. If this spoke to you, share it, save it. Say something in the comments. I read every one. And here's the truth I hope stays with you long after this ends. You're not lost. You've just been too busy to remember who you were before the world told you what you had to be.